Welcome, everybody, to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. Thanks for joining us today. As always, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We would love for you to be a regular listener or viewer if you want to catch us on YouTube of this podcast. It's officially the holiday season as far as I'm concerned. Thanksgiving is next week. We're recording this a week earlier, but basically when this airs, Thanksgiving will be in a week. It's a little early this year. And in honor of Thanksgiving, if you have not yet, you should really write a thank you note to your school counselors for their help. A handwritten card, always a great thing, but even just a shout out as you're passing their office in the hall would be, I'm quite certain, welcomed based on everything I see on Facebook and how much they appreciate it when their students say thank you. So we have a great show as always for you guys today. We're going to be answering your questions. But before we get to that, I'm really excited to welcome back Ben Baum, who is Vice-President of Enrollment at St. John's College. He was on the show a few months ago, and he's back, and he's going to be sharing more about their new alternative application process. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
Absolutely. We love having repeat guests. That means it's a good experience and not afraid to come back. And that's always good. Really excited because St. John's is doing something incredibly unique this year in your new discussion-based evaluation, which is an alternative application. But before we dig into that, can you give us a quick overview of St. John's, because it is a pretty unique institution?
Yeah, St. John's is, I think, one of the most distinctive institutions in the country. We are a small liberal arts college that actually is the third oldest of all the colleges in the United States. We were founded in 1696. There's a lot of history here. And yet St. John's has an identity that really goes back to a change we made in our curriculum in the 1930s. St. John's adopted at that time what we call our Great Books curriculum. So every student at St. John's is doing the same program together. There's one degree, it's the Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Arts. Students are reading roughly 200 great books, and the books go back to the ancient Greek world with Homer and Plato. And then students read their way from the ancient world into the modern world by their senior year. And the books are interdisciplinary. And so it's not just great literature or great philosophy. It's great books in law and politics, in the sciences, in mathematics, in music. And instead of reading any textbooks at all, what our students are doing are reading these original authors in all of these fields and then coming to class. And every class at St. John's will be a discussion of 20 students or fewer, really getting into the ideas that these authors have been talking about for some cases thousands of years.
Right. I mean, it's just really cool. As someone who is an English major and really likes to read, I can very much appreciate this. I can also appreciate that it's a pretty unique experience and is not going to be for every student, but for the right student, what an amazing opportunity. So thank you for that overview. If anyone is interested, if you go into the College Coach blog and you search for either Ben Baum or you search for St. John's, you will pop up a link to the podcast we did. Like I said, it was probably earlier this year, might have even been late last year, where we really dug into St. John's and what it's all about. And so if people would like to learn more, they should access that previous podcast. But today, we're talking about something different. So this year, for the first time, there are two ways to apply to St. John's. So talk to me about the more traditional way.
Sure. So we've, for a long time, asked students to complete a pretty typical application form in which they share with us all their personal details about their lives. We've used the common application, which is what many colleges use across the country. We also give students the option of the coalition application. We have our own homegrown one, but they're all effectively asking the same list of questions.
Right.
And we've often talked about what we do distinctively in our traditional application process as being focused around an essay that we ask students to write. So in addition to knowing who they are, to reading recommendations, to seeing their transcripts, we would read an essay about a book that the student considers to be great and how it's influenced them or their thinking in some way. And pretty unusually, actually, at St. John's, we don't have a word limit on our essay. We have a word minimum. And so we expect students to write as much as they need to write in order to express themselves and to share their ideas with us. And in our process, that essay has historically been the thing that matters most. We're not looking for a student who could be a fit at any college, as you were saying before.
Right.
We're we're a unique institution that isn't necessarily a fit for every student. And it's through that essay that we often find the kinds of students who really thrive at St. John's, who would love our approach to reading great books and talking about them here. And so that essay has taken kind of preeminent importance for us in the admissions process up until this year, and when we've made some changes.
Right, right. And I have to say that not having a limit is sort of the kind of thing that keeps me up at night sometimes, but it's totally appropriate for you guys. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, not having a maximum, sorry, you have a minimum in which lets students know you need to write a fairly extensive essay for us. And if you want to go on and on longer and tell us even more, that's something that we value. And I do like that, as challenging as it can be to help students with that. It might tell some students, oh, this might not be the place for me. But it is kind of interesting at a school where you're reading so many books and presumably where writing is a big part of the curriculum, that you've actually introduced an alternative way to apply that takes the emphasis off of the essay. So talk to us a little bit more about the new way to apply, and we can kind of get into the why of it all.
So we spent this past summer thinking about how our application reflects who we are as an institution. And I think actually we're very happy with our application, our traditional application, and how it reflects who we are, in that we ask about these great books. We really put this emphasis on there. We have this word minimum instead of a word maximum. These are all things we're proud of that I think are reflective of who we are. And yet we looked at our application and we thought, this doesn't capture really everything about the identity of St. John's. As I mentioned at the start of the program, we read all these books, and so books are a big piece of it. We do a lot of writing, of course, that's a part of what we do. But discussion is one of the main pillars of what St. John's is all about. There are no lectures, every class is a discussion. And so the discussion we had this summer in the admissions office was, how do we make our application reflect that discussion-based nature of what we do? And we came up with this discussion-based application, and not to replace the traditional application, but as an optional alternative to it for those students who would find it the right fit. And so in the discussion-based application, students still complete a form, but it's a much more abbreviated form than what the common application or any other application uses. It's very brief. We estimate generally students will take 5 to 10 minutes to complete the form.
Wow.
They'll attach to the form 2 things that we need in order to make our decision. One is the transcripts, and so they can attach a transcript to that. They also need to attach a writing sample, so we have a sample of how they write, but something they've already written for high school that's been graded by a teacher, nothing they have to create for the purpose of applying to college.
Right.
And then beyond that, what they will do when they submit that form is they will find instructions on how to sign up for 3 things that are the heart of the discussion-based application. One is an interview with an admissions counselor. The other is an interview with one of our faculty members. Mm-hmm. And the third is participation online in a prospective student seminar where they'll read an excerpt from a great book and talk about it with a group of other prospective students and one of our faculty members.
Wow.
And the assessment of the application is really based on those 3 things, as opposed to what we do in the traditional application, relying on essays and also recommendations.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, that's super exciting and interesting. And I can, hearing you talk about it, obviously it makes total sense that this could be a great way to select future students, because as you say, the whole premise of the university or the college is you read these books and then you discuss them in class. And so here you have an opportunity to do exactly that and see them in action. And when I think about the things that families find frustrating about the college application process, whether it's students feel this way or parents feel this way, it's often that, well, they don't really get to know me, or they're not really getting to know my student and all the wonderful things they can bring to the table. And of course, you can't know everything about a student through this new way to apply, but you are getting a really excellent picture of how they think on the fly, how they engage with groups, certainly how they engage with faculty, how they talk to you. It sounds really exciting and like something that would be nice to see, put into place in other schools. Although I can't imagine it's got to be pretty resource heavy for you guys. And yeah.
It is resource heavy. I mean, we are a small college, and that's part of what makes this possible for us. We have our admission staff who can work one-on-one with students. We have faculty who are excited to work one-on-one with students, but it requires that kind of institutional buy-in to this very personalized admissions process. And not every place might have those resources. Not every place would place the same value on discussion. I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, the reason this as an idea that works for St. John's, I think primarily is because it fits our institutional identity. It's about what we do. And that might be a great fit for some other place, but it might not be a fit at all for places that might be exploring other ways of adapting their application for the future.
Right. And so this is the first year you've introduced this option. What's the sense so far? Are students taking advantage of it? Or are you still seeing more of the traditional application? How's it going so far?
Yeah, so we launched this in August and we got a great reaction. And we continue to get that great reaction, both from students that we talk to who are excited for this. They think it might be a better way for them to express themselves in the admissions process. Also, counselors I talk to when I'm on the road visiting high schools, for example, I get a lot of eager questions from counselors about how all this works, how it could be a fit, where those challenges might lie. So far, we've been really excited with how it's gone. And it's still early, and so I can't give you the full assessment of it quite yet. But we have about 100 students who have opted so far to apply using this application. And we have a small application pool at St. John's. This past year, we had about 1,500 applications at the end of our cycle. So 100 at this very early juncture feels like quite a lot. It feels like it's caught a little bit of a fire amongst some population of our students. And yet, like I said earlier, there are students for whom this sounds like a great fit. I talk to students who think this is exactly what I want to do. It's the right fit for me. I talk to other students who say that sounds really interesting, but that's not what I want to do at all. I much prefer to put my thoughts in writing, to have time to think things through, to edit, and that's okay. We are assessing these two applications in identical ways. We're looking for the same types of things that real fit for St. John's in our community, and sometimes that's expressed in writing, and sometimes that's expressed in conversation. And so I really encourage students to think about these things as being equal. They should choose the one that can allows them to express themselves in the best way.
Yeah, and I can see that sort of. There are going to be students who are going to be super comfortable in that discussion-based evaluation part of the process. And all right, I'm going to go into this group of students and feel comfortable expressing my opinion and engaging, even though I've not met anyone. And even though what I'm saying is being actually evaluated, not for a grade, but for whether or not I get into college. And other students who would say, hold up, that I can do that once I'm there, but it's too much pressure for me. I could see both, and there are students who are excellent writers, and for them, that's an easy thing. And for other students, it's a little bit more of a slog, but they're super comfortable on the fly. So I, again, love it. I think it's so exciting. And I agree that it isn't going to be the right thing for many schools, probably most schools, but I'm looking to this to see if you guys have success with it. Will we see some other institutions? There isn't anything that's really similar to you guys out there, but schools with a similar style, with more discussion-based, smaller applicant pools, smaller campus, sort of population, maybe they'll adopt something like this. And so I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I won't be surprised to see other colleges wanting to innovate in the application space. If you think about it, applications tend to not be very different from each other. And yet, these institutions are often very different from each other. And so I think there's a room to explore here. And that is how we started with this project, thinking about ourselves and our identity and how we express that through the application. But I think we've also discovered all these other benefits to this as well. At least I'm hoping we discover those benefits as we see how this works going forward. But for example, I'm excited to really have a much more dynamic interaction with students through the application process than they do with our traditional application. Yeah. For most students, they fill out a form, they write their essays, they submit it into a black box, and they just wait to hear a response. With our discussion-based application, students are actually back and forth with us, having conversations with a faculty member, having conversations with each other, having a conversation with the admissions counselor. And so there's a much more dynamic relationship that I think can make the whole process feel better, feel more substantive and interesting, and then also hopefully actually convince the students we admit through this process that this is the kind of community they want to join too.
Yeah, and it highlights a key component of the process, which I believe gets very frequently lost, which is colleges are looking to engage with applicants as much as applicants are looking to engage with colleges. And especially with a smaller school where you're a smaller community, you want to show them all the wonderful things that you have. And how do you do that with a paper application? And this sounds like a brilliant way to, like you said, you're going back and forth with them. You become hopefully a little less scary to the students, but also much more real. The only downside I could see is that if a student doesn't get accepted is, wow, that feels a little more personal because they really got to know me and they didn't want me. But I don't know that it feels less personal when students get a denial from a school with whom they have zero communication beyond pressing send on an application.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, that's a tough part of what we do, is having to say no sometimes. Although I do think these more personal interactions really help students express themselves better. And in some ways, I wonder if that doesn't help us get to say yes, which is what we really want to say. Yes, we want to bring you into our community. Yes, we want to be a part of this project we're doing together with these great books. And it's something that we've actually seen in our admissions process in the traditional one in the past few years, that we've always had the option for a student to sign up for an interview. And sometimes what we've seen is students come into those traditional interviews, and really that's where they shine. They're showing us who they are. As we get to ask them questions and dig a little bit deeper, all of a sudden we uncover this great fit for St. John's that maybe it wasn't as evident on the surface of their application. And I think that's particularly can be true of students who may be underrepresented in most colleges around the country, students who didn't have parents themselves who went to college, that the application form, the essay, this whole system we often make students go through is often unfamiliar to some students. And an actual conversation can feel much more familiar and can be a place where the student can express themselves in a much more real way. And so in that way, it actually helps them, I think, elevate some students, particularly those who are underrepresented, to show that we're able to say yes. And that's actually, in the end, what I want to do. I want to find those students who are such a great fit for St. John's.
Yeah, I mean, and anytime you can go beyond just numbers on a page, it's a win. And yeah, get beyond that. Oh, well, this is an essay. I've gone to a school where we write lots of essays and the teachers really work with us on how to perfect those essays, versus I've gone to a school we don't do a lot of writing. And so, man, the essay is not going to be a strength of mine. And you won't really get to know what my strengths are until we talk. So it's very exciting for many different reasons and in many different ways. Last thing is, where can students go to find more about this information, and what's your deadline? So if this is sparking any interest in someone who's listening, where do they go to get started?
You can go straight to our website, which is sjc.edu. We have information right on the homepage about applying either with the traditional application or with the discussion-based application. But what I would encourage you, and this is the nature of the discussion-based application, is to yes, check out the website, yes, read the information you have there, but then reach out to us. And we have contact information on our website for all of our admissions counselors. You're also welcome to reach me directly. I'm easy to find. I'm at benjamin.baum, BAUM, @sjc.edu. And that is part of the nature of St. John's. We like to have these personal conversations with prospective students, with parents. And so you should feel free to reach out to us if you're listening and thinking this sounds like an intriguing fit for me or for my students.
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be answering your questions. So don't go away.